Good evening, everyone. The board's still in closed session. We are extending our closed session till 6:45 and we'll come back for open session. Thank you for your patience. I would like to welcome all of you to our board meeting tonight. To access translation, please click on the globe icon below or at Dijon. You can go to the corner of the room to get translation. Para acceder a traducción, aprieten el botón del globo en Zoom o en Dijon pueden ir a la esquina del gimnasio. We are returning from closed session. After opening procedures, the public will have an opportunity to make public comment. The board voted to change public comment format. We have opportunities on non-agenda items in person through Zoom app and by telephone at the beginning of the meeting. Public comment will last now 1 hour. The time allotted for each speaker is 2 minutes. If you're attending the meeting in person, you will need to submit a request to address the board form to indicate your desire to speak on an agenda item. After it's been turned into staff, they are placed in order of when they are turned in. We also call on speakers one at a time and switching between public comment at Dijon and one on Zoom. If participating via Zoom, you will need to raise your hand by clicking on the appropriate icon in the Zoom app or by pressing *9 if accessing the meeting by phone. No yielding of time or substitution of speakers is permitted. The public will also have an opportunity to make public comment on agenda items after staff presentations for each discussion and action item. The public will have 10 minutes per item and 1 minute per speaker. Due to the Brown Act, board members cannot discuss items that are not on the agenda and do not usually respond to items presented in public comment. Now let's move to our opening procedures. First, we have the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody please rise. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now we do our land acknowledgement. We recognize that we're presently on the lands of the Chochenyo, Muwekma, Karkan, Ohlone peoples and acknowledge them as the first inhabitants of the land we currently occupy. Now, Dr. Hurst is currently on vacation, so Chief Academic Officer Sonia Neely Johnson is acting superintendent. CAO Neely Johnson, would you please take roll call?
Okay, thank you. Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy.
Present.
Trustee Smith-Foes.
Good evening, everyone. Present.
Trustee Reckler.
Good evening, I'm present.
Trustee Christian.
Good evening, President.
Trustee Phillips. Okay, we have everyone here and Trustee Phillips is absent.
Thank you so much. CAO Johnson, do we have anything to report from closed session?
Yes, the report out from closed session is as followed. In closed session regarding agenda item A21, the board voted to approve the readmission of the student cases number 22302. And we had 3 yeses and 2 absent. Trustee Christian and Trustee Phillips were absent for that vote. And then for student case number 22308, we had 4 yeses and 1 absent, and Trustee Phillips was absent for that vote. Next, we had in closed session, agenda item A23, the board voted to reject the claim number 623376, and this was related to alleged personal injury. And the vote was as follows: 4 yeses and Trustee Phillips was absent for that vote. Next, we had the board voted to approve the recommendations of the following employees. Recommendations for interim secondary director of special ed, Ms. Siobhan Pangeline Green. And the vote was Trustee Christian, yes. Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy, yes. Trustee Phillips absent. Trustee Reckler, yes. And Trustee Smith-Foes, yes. Next was the vote for the board approve the recommendation of elementary director of special ed, Perlita Vickroy for permanent status. The vote was trustee Christian, yes, trustee Gonzalez Hoy, yes, trustee Phillips absent, trustee Reckler, yes, and trustee Smith Folds, yes. The next appointment was for elementary school principal. We had 3 positions. For Matthew Sloan for interim principal at Chavez. The vote was trustee Christian, yes, trustee Gonzalez Hoy, yes, trustee Phillips absent, trustee Reckler, yes, and trustee Smith Folds, yes. Next was the elementary school principal Marlon Galdamez for Downer Elementary. And the vote was as follow, trustee Christian, yes, trustee Gonzalez Hoy, yes, trustee Phillips absent, trustee Reckler, yes, and trustee Smith Folds, yes. And there was also a vote for Keelan Hunter as principal for Riverside. And we had trustee Christian, yes, trustee Gonzalez Hoy, yes, trustee Phillips absent, trustee Reckler, yes, and trustee Smith Folds absent. The next one's for middle school principal. We have 1 interim principal, Miss Athena Valdez for Dejan Middle School, and the vote was trustee Christian, yes, trustee Gonzalez Hoy, yes, trustee Phillips absent, trustee Reckler, yes, and trustee Smith Folds, yes. And then for Helms Middle School, Principal Priya Simbi is permanent status. The vote was trustee Christian, yes, trustee Gonzalez Hoy, yes, trustee Phillips absent, trustee Reckler, yes, and trustee Smith Folds, yes. Next, we have interim high school principal for Richmond High School, Rocio Reyes. And we have trustee Christian, yes, trustee Gonzalez Hoy, yes, trustee Phillips absent, trustee Reckler, yes, and trustee Smith Folds, yes. We also have an appointment of interim executive director, Jose De Leon. And the vote is trustee Christian, yes, trustee Gonzalez Hoy, yes, trustee Phillips absent, trustee Reckler, yes, and trustee Smith Folds, yes. And that concludes our report out. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we are going to move to public comment. Did we have any public comment on Zoom or in person?
There's no public comment.
Thank you. It shows that we're in summer. I don't think I've ever seen no public comment. Okay, moving on. We are now going to move to agenda review and adoption. Board. If there are no, oh, trustee Reckler, yes.
I'm sorry, wrong,
You're in consent.
yeah,
No worries. If there are no objections, the agenda will be approved. So approved. Thank you so much. Now we're gonna move to the minutes from May 17th, June 7th, June 13th, and June 14th. Trustee Reckler,
I'll go ahead and move the approval of the minutes for May 17, June 7, June 13th, and June 14th as presented.
Smith Folds, seconds.
thank you. Okay, let's move to the vote. Clerk Smith Folds,
Smith Folds, yes.
trustee Christian,
Yes.
trustee Reckler,
Reckler, yes.
and I'm a yes. Thank you. Now we're gonna move to consent items. Or are there any items that I would like to pull? Trustee Reckler,
Yes, I'd like to pull C8, all contracts, and C9, service provider RFPs. And
Thank you.
then I have just a brief comment.
okay, thank you. So C8 and C9 are being pulled. Board, anyone else, anything else? Okay, if there are no objections, we'll approve the consent items, except for C8 and C9. So approved, thank you. Okay, now we're gonna move to our acting superintendent report, which will be done by Ms. Neely Johnson.
Thank you. As we're pulling it up, I just want to say that just very excited about what is happening for summer for our students in WCCUSD. And so we just have a short report to really just highlight. We have programs at over 31 of our sites, different types of programs, I would say academic and enrichment. And so we just wanted to highlight a few for you this summer. Okay, before we go into the report, I do want to acknowledge that one of our long-term teachers, Mr. Calvin Transpleasure, who served the students in West Contra Costa for over 35 years. He worked at a variety of our elementary schools. He retired shortly before passing, and we want to extend our heartfelt condolences to the Transpleasure family and our deep appreciation for his service to WCCUSD. I also would like to take this time before we do a moment of silence to read from one of our employees who is also a parent. This is from Carmel Aguilar. She wrote, "We do recall with fondness Mr. Calvin Transpleasure, who was my second son, Andreas, teacher at Bayview Elementary School. He made the kids' life in school interesting with his novel ideas of field trips to Battery Alexander. The picture in his memorial shows Andrea in a yellow polo shirt taken against the Golden Gate as their backdrop. To ball games in Berkeley, selling hot dogs, making a teeny profit, which funded their various Bay Area field trips, also mentioned in his memorial. For the millennium, they did a time capsule, which they buried in the Bayview School grounds to be opened by the same class in the year 2000. The class got together in the year 2000, but unfortunately, the encapsulated remembrance could no longer be located. We thank Mr. Transpleasure for his dedication and love for the children in his class, and this thought stay with my husband and will stay with mine till my memory is no more. Very sincerely." So Mr. Transpleasure touched so many lives, and we just want to take time for a moment of silence. Thank you. Next slide. So just to give you some of the highlights that are happening this summer, we have our elementary summer school happening, and we're calling it our elementary summer hubs. We are at 4 schools: Bayview, Dover, Lincoln, and Obama, and we have over 750 students in attendance. Next slide. We also are having professional learning for our adults. This is a picture of our adults at a math professional development, but we also had Teacher College Institute and other programs that we'll be doing throughout the summer for our teachers in their summer learning. Next slide. This is a summer family reading workshop with Springboard Collaborative. It is a collaborative that we have worked in partnership to provide enrichment and academic support and services to many of our schools. This was a family workshop where our families learned to apply reading tips for their students, and also parents were trained on how to ask purposeful questions to really engage students in reading. So we had a lot of parents that attended, and then they also received materials to take home and practice these reading strategies with their students. Next slide. And our secondary summer school, this year, we have 459 total students enrolled in in-person high school, and we have 60 in-person middle school. Edgenuity is our online program, and we have this at every one of our high school sites with over 400 students enrolled. And to date, even though we have 2 more weeks of summer school, we have over 100 students who have already received credit through Edgenuity. So we're very excited about about that. We will also hold our summer graduation at Richmond High School on July 20th at 6 p.m. And we expect 60 graduates to participate. Next slide. We also have our C-Stay Summer Enrichment Camp. We are in the 2021 plan, and we will be continuing our plan for the next 17 months. But this is our second summer working with our focal scholars. So we have 90 students from 3 schools, and they're engaging in fun and learning through a STEM approach and going to many of the wonderful STEM-based facilities in our community. And this is a picture of Lawrence Hall of Science and our students engaging in that work. Next slide. And next we have our special ed summer school, which we call the extended school year, ESY. The theme for this year is Under the Sea. And we have 650 students enrolled in pre-K to transition. We do academics and enrichment. We have our unique system for academics and Voyager for our higher functioning students. We have art, social skills, adaptive physical education, and OT, which is occupational therapy, PT, physical therapy, and speech. And these are just a few of the pictures of our students engaging. This is a social aspect. We had an ice cream social, so students had to basically order their choice, and our teachers and staff, paraprofessionals were the servers. Next slide. We are also highlighting our hiring update. We are continuing to look for educators that want to work in our wonderful district. So we will having job fairs and LinkedIn outreach. So actually tomorrow is the first of a job fair that we will have July 13th, and then Saturday, July 22nd. And our communications team is supporting this hiring campaign through multiple channels. So if you go on our social media platforms, you will see information, our website, and we will also have LinkedIn networking training and nude headshots for managers. So right now we just found out today that we're going to have digital billboards highlighting the different opportunities here in West Contra Costa. And those billboards will be in Cordelia, which is Fairfield, and Oakland. And that concludes our superintendent's report. We just wanted to share some of the fascinating things happening this summer. And we have not stopped learning, but also having fun. Thank you.
Thank you so much, CAO Neely Johnson. Let's move to questions. Board, are there any questions for anyone? Okay, thank you so much. Okay, board, now we're gonna move to our action items. First, our Williams Lawsuits Complaints Quarterly Report. Mr. Freeze, I believe this is your item.
Yes, good evening. Tonight, we're asking the board to approve the Williams Quarterly Report for the period between April 1st and June 30, 2023. There were no findings for textbooks, teacher vacancies, misassignments, or facilities for this period.
Thank you, Mr. Freeze. Do we have any public comment on this item?
There's no public comment.
Thank you. Board, are there any questions? Okay, can I have a motion on this item?
I'll go ahead and move the Williams Lawsuit Complaints Quarterly Report.
Thank you. I'll second. Okay, let's move to our vote. Clerk Smith Folds.
Smith Folds abstains.
Thank you. Sorry, I did not see if there were any comments. Are there any comments? Okay, sorry, I jumped. Clerk Smith Folds, can you restart?
Sure, Smith Folds abstains.
Thank you, Trustee Christian.
Yes.
Thank you, Trustee Reckler.
Reckler, yes.
Trustee Phillips.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. It passes 4 yes, 1 abstention. Okay, now we're gonna move to the E2 Korematsu Middle School Building Gymnasium. Okay, I'm not gonna read the whole title. Mr. Freeze, I'll let you go ahead and present
Sure.
the item.
Thank you very much. Tonight, we're asking the board to approve a change order that's greater than 10% for the Korematsu Gymnasium floor replacement project. Staff is seeking approval of change order number 1 for Korematsu Middle School Gymnasium flooring project. The change order includes the following: the removal of approximately 6,000 square foot of gym flooring, installation of a waterproofing membrane system, and the replacement of the gym floor. The project scope included limited demolition of approximately 3,000 square feet. Upon removing the floor and testing of the concrete substrate, the relative humidity and moisture contents exceeded the acceptable limits for the manufacture of the wood flooring. The remedy is to install a waterproofing membrane underneath the entire floor. This change order is to remove the rest of the flooring, which is the additional 6,000 square foot, in order to install the waterproofing membrane, and then reinstallation of the floor on top of that. The original contract was $189,495. This change order, unfortunately, is 68% of the original contract, and that's why we bring it forward as an action item. The change order is for $129,449, which brings the total contract amount to $318,944 for this project. And the reason that we can't rebid the work, the floor has already been removed partially. The project is on pause now and waiting for the approval of this change order in order to move forward with the final replacement of the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Freeze. Do we have any public comment on this item?
There's no public comment.
Thank you. Board, do we have questions? Trustee Phillips, go ahead.
Thank you. Back up a little bit from this. Why wasn't this caught before the floor was laid down the first time?
So when the floor was originally laid in the original build, the floor would have had to have met the moisture level content at the time, otherwise it wouldn't have been installed. But over the past several years, we've had signs of the floor warping, especially during the winter months. So we've done some additional testing around the exterior of the floor itself, where we could actually test the concrete. The moisture levels were relatively low, within acceptable limits. Over this past winter, with the heavy rains we had, the floor actually swelled to the point that it had raised up off the entry, off the floor itself, causing a hazard for the floor. It could no longer be played on. There were sub drains installed during the original construction, but those sub drains and the moisture had risen up through those sub drains that were installed. We've capped those drains now, so there is no way for the moisture to rise up underneath the flooring, but the moisture had risen and spread underneath the entire floor, and that's why we're in the situation we are today.
Did the moisture level increase over time, or was the original moisture level miscalculated?
I believe, and this is my speculation, but I believe what has happened over time is that the moisture has been seeping up through the floor, which has caused the warping, and has been accumulated underneath. There is a plastic membrane that's actually underneath the floor now, has been accumulating on that plastic membrane, and becoming like to the dew point where it's actually dripping and has saturated the concrete surface. There's no way to dry that out in order to put that flooring back down without protecting it. And this is in the best interest for the longevity of the floor into the future.
Is it, so we're not speculating, is it possible to ask the persons who are working on the project, or some architect or some expert that's related, whether the original moisture level was miscalculated or if it has actually increased over time? And the reason that I'm asking that is because if there was a miscalculation in the beginning, perhaps someone could help us pay for this.
We can certainly pull those reports from the original. We have had it looked at by a soils engineer before, to making sure that everything we've done around the building to limit the exposures has been addressed, from the drainage from the outside of the building, making sure everything is waterproofed and still doing what its intended purpose was.
Those are my questions, but I would like to make the motion when the time comes.
Sure. Clerk Smith Folds?
Good afternoon, Mr. Freeze. Can you tell us what bucket of money this is coming out of?
This is coming out of the restricted maintenance account.
The restricted maintenance account.
Yes.
Thank you so much. The second thing is, do you foresee this happening? Korematsu's old, right? It's one of our older schools. Is that yes, no, maybe? I'm not sure.
Korematsu was built 2013, I believe.
2013. Oh, okay, so it's in the 20s, the 2000s. Do you see this happening in any other schools? Do you foresee it happening with the moisture and the floors and the gyms? Do you see it? Can you foresee that or no?
We're not seeing it occur in other gyms across the district. Korematsu just being on the hillside itself, it just, that site has water issues in general from underground natural occurring streams.
Okay, so it's a bunch of stuff happening that is the reason why Korematsu's gym got hit so bad.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
So it's a bunch of stuff happening. It's the location of the gym. It's the water content over the kind of wacky weather that we've had, kind of all bubbled up into this.
I believe those are all
Situation.
contributing factors to the problem we're having with the floor.
Okay, thank you. President Gonzalez-Hoy, I'm complete.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Okay, let's move to our motion. Trustee Phillips?
I move that we approve item E2, Korematsu MS Middle School Building B Gymnasium Flooring Recoding, Refinishing, and Partial Floor Replacement Change Order approval with the addition that staff reports back to the board in 90 days to answer the question whether the moisture level, the acceptable, whether the moisture level was miscalculated in the original planning, or whether the moisture level has actually increased over time.
Thank you. Mr. Priest, did you get that?
Understood. We'll
Okay.
we'll bring that information back. to the
Thank you.
board.
Okay, I'll second that. Are there any comments? Okay, let's move to a vote. Clerk Smith Folds?
Smith Folds, yes.
Thank you, Trustee Christian, sorry.
Yes.
Trustee Reckler?
Reckler, yes.
Trustee Phillips?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Passed unanimously. Thank you. Now we're moving to E3. Mr. Freeze, this is also yours? No, I'm sorry. Ms. Sanders, this is your item.
Thank you very much. Just one moment to pull up the presentation. Right. So this is a change order for our website content management redesign. Our website content management system is essentially the container that holds all of the content for our website. Our current website content management system is Blackboard Web Community Manager. Blackboard has been completely acquired by Finalsite. And so part of why we are pursuing the redesign of our website are needs that we've heard expressed by our stakeholders. It is also the reality of the fact that we do need to change our content management system because Blackboard Web Community Manager will cease to exist after this year. And we have already noticed issues in terms of the level of support and maintenance of that content management system. So we have a sense of urgency about getting ourselves onto a current content management system that is supported. Prior to this meeting, we had secured a transition plan and a redesign agreement with Finalsite for what's called a Theme Plus change order or a Theme Plus redesign. That was a templated redesign. It's similar to what West Contra Costa Unified has done for a content management system setup in the past. But we're here today because what we've discovered from our stakeholder engagement and from research into our context and our competition, was that this would not be a sufficient redesign of our website based on what our community needs. So we'll just talk briefly about why exactly we're in this position and what our goals for this project are. And I will happily address any questions that come up. So when we think about what a content management system is, again, this is what website editors and content managers use to create, store, and modify all of the content in a website. And in our case, our content management system supports 3 different websites. When we think of our websites, it's beyond just the district website. It's also our staff-facing district intranet and all of our public-facing school websites. So in total, we're thinking about over 55 sites. We really want to think about this as the architecture of our digital home, as we understand how infrequently we want to do a redesign of this scale, but also how we want to do that really regularly. So this is beyond an aesthetic redesign. This is a structural rebuild, and this really lays the foundation of what will be possible for the duration of the time that we have this design. In the corporate world, the average frequency of a redesign like this is every 3 years. West Contra Costa Unified last did a structural redesign 8 years ago in 2015-16, and did a little bit of an aesthetic redesign in 2018-2019. But we are certainly overdue for restructuring. And that's part of why on the back end of the website, a lot of our internal users experience some headaches, and then our community experiences some related headaches when they're trying to access the information that they need. So in terms of our recommendations, we did do stakeholder engagement, and we also did some research to understand how we got where we are, and also the competitive environment that we're in terms of K-12 communications. In order to develop a clear picture of what our community, staff, and families need from our websites, we gathered feedback by surveying across stakeholder groups, pushing out that survey through multiple communication channels. We held staff and family engagement sessions, and we also attended parent advisory committee meetings to share initial findings and receive deeper feedback. That phase of engagement will continue as we develop our new design, so that we make sure we get really consistent feedback and that we're hearing our community correctly in terms of what they meant when we initially did our stakeholder engagement. Then we moved from feedback to strategy by conducting research. We conducted a trend analysis by comparing our current stakeholder engagement results to the results of what we saw in our stakeholder engagement during the 2018-2019 redesign. There's some new information that surfaced this time around, which is really useful. And there's also some really important consistent trends that we've seen from what our stakeholders said 5 years ago and what they're saying today. We also researched web design strategies that are used by large private systems. And the reason why we focused on large private school systems is we really thought about where we are in terms of enrollment as a district, and what our communication platforms really need to do. Our communication platforms need to successfully attract staff and families, and we need to no longer assume that our families will come to us. We also conducted a root cause analysis of persistent issues that are occurring on the back end of our current content management system, so that we could really understand why our website has gotten as unwieldy as it has, and make sure that in terms of the implementation, we're doing what we need to do in terms of setting systems and structures, so that whatever redesign we put in place will be as successful and sustainable as it can possibly be. We know we don't want to do a redesign of this scale too often. It is an expense, but in the same time that we wouldn't want the architecture of our home to go without repair over a large amount of time. Similarly, we want to make sure that we get in there and we do a rebuild when we see that it's necessary. Our engagement and research yielded 3 key recommendations. The first is that our site structures need to be differentiated by the audience of each of our site types. It's not necessarily the same folks who are going to our district public website first, the same people who are going to our staff intranet, and the same people who are going to our school websites. Those are different groups of our stakeholders, and we now have some data that helps us understand who's going where and what they need. We also need interactive tools that support enrollment and engagement goals. And that's really what we saw when we started looking at our competitors. Families need interactive tools that help them navigate their educational options and resources to understand what's present at different school sites. And also, we heard in our DLCAP recommendations, our families want to be able to explore curriculum. Our families want to be able to explore resources. And so we need to make sure that the tools on our website go beyond just static information and really encourage our families to explore what they need. Really consistently, we also saw feedback that family and staff want a calendar-centric website. And that was one of the consistencies from this feedback and the 2018-19 feedback. Our community is really saying, we want to be here to partner with you. We want to know what's going on before it happens. And we're struggling to get that information in a way that helps us be as involved as we'd like to be. And lastly, we also discovered that we need custom branding elements that could really help us to more effectively tell our community's story and distinguish our district schools from competitors. Our current branding does communicate that we are a school system, but it doesn't yet significantly distinguish us from our competitors and give us a clear identity that shows our strengths and our values. So we'll dig into this just a little bit further. When we think about what we mean by site structure differentiated by audience of the site type, we want to think about our stakeholder groups and how they're accessing our websites. Parents and families, about half and half, said that they prefer accessing our websites on a computer versus mobile. But we want to really center the 53% who prefer mobile when we're thinking about this through an equity lens. Those are more likely to be our families in transition. Those are more likely to be our socioeconomically disadvantaged families. We want to make sure that those families are really easily able to find the resources that they need and navigate their educational options. In terms of our students, again, we do want to think about our students as users of our websites. They want to go to our school websites first, and 73% of them prefer going on their phones. Staff, 80% prefers computers. When we think about our district websites as a workplace tool, that makes sense. Community members, also 86% prefer computers. So what does that mean for our different websites? That means that our district public website really needs to be mobile first, and our calendar and resources need to be easy to find. Our current district website is somewhat cluttered, and a lot of that information is actually staff facing and needs to be moved to the intranet. The intranet needs to be computer first and comprehensive but navigable so that our staff can find the information that they need. And our school websites need to be mobile first, calendar centric with announcements integrated, helping our families and community be as involved as they'd like to be. So again, this is part of why we're shifting toward a custom redesign, which is what this change order is. It's moving from a static template that doesn't give us many options in terms of customization to really thinking about how can we make each site type do what it needs to do for the audience it's seeking to serve. Our second key recommendation, again, is about interactive tools. And I do want to say every example that we have as a screenshot here is from a final site CMS supported website. So these examples that we're looking at are real examples supported by the CMS that we're moving to, that we can work with our solutions engineer to figure out how we create a similar tool for our school district. So again, this idea that families need interactive tools that help them navigate options and resources. We saw in a lot of private systems websites, families can see what programs are offered at different schools. Those are the kinds of questions that our transfer office has told us they're often getting. So the easier we can make it for our families to find their answers to those questions, we hope the more engaging that will be for our families as they enroll. We also heard recommendations from DLCAP that our families want ways, again, to explore our curriculum. And those, again, are custom tools that we will be able to build with this more extensive custom redesign. So those are the two examples that you see there that connect to what we heard from our families. In addition, we heard across all of our stakeholder groups, 77.6% said that the first thing they seek when they're going to any of our websites is the calendar and is a sense of what events are coming up so that they can be involved. That means that we need to make our calendar easier to find. We need to center it on our page out of recognition of what our stakeholders are seeking, and also make sure that the way that our calendar events are listed really includes a call to action. If this event should let you RSVP, you should be able to RSVP right from there. So that's, again, where we're thinking about a more customized redesign for that homepage to really surface the information that our community wants to see. This is one of the pieces that really does require a level of customization, and we want to be thoughtful about this. Right now, what we're seeing on our website and on our school websites is a clearly templated website. You can see that aesthetically when you navigate through our pages. When we looked at what we would consider some more competitive websites, they have these custom branding that goes beyond just the logo. If you see in the first example here, which is Issaquah School District, those mountains in the background there, as you scroll up and down, those mountains, which are part of the feature of their community, those become real mountains. They're also featured in their buttons. There's subtle little tools like that that give us a sense of identity. And one of the things that we've heard, not just through our website stakeholder engagement, but through a lot of stakeholder engagement that we've done in many different settings, is that our community is yearning for a sense of belonging and identity when it comes to West Contra Costa Unified Schools. And again, you can see in the other two examples what it looks like when we have elements of our branding that are more reflected in the structure and the background, and when the strengths and values of a school system really come through in the way that its website is designed. So how do we make this happen in terms of time and funding? These are some really important considerations as we look at this change order and think about how to make this feasible. So if our website redesign is successful, it will move the needle to increase enrollment and attract and retain staff. We see this website design as a really essential piece of infrastructure to help us achieve those goals. This goal does define our timeline. It means that our goal is to launch new websites by February 2024, because we don't want to live through another enrollment cycle without websites that really showcase the best of who we are and make it compelling for our families to enroll and also easy to understand their enrollment options. This is an ambitious timeline, but it is possible. We have worked with our project manager at Final Site and also our solutions engineer to make sure that this will be possible. And we believe that it's deeply necessary for our community. Our project manager is aware of this constraint and is designing a project management timeline to achieve this. The way that our project management works with Final Site, we have a project management system that is shared with them. It's called Maven Link, and it basically breaks down the entire process into a set of micro deadlines. They make sure that our designer and our developers are calendared fully for each piece of that timeline. As soon as we sign the new contract with them, they will roll that out and make sure that each piece of that moves forward as it should and is on the calendar in an advanced way for their team. On our team, it means that we need to be doing things currently, which we are, like our content audit and what's called the intake audit of all of our current assets. That's our photos, our logos, all of that. So we're doing something simultaneously to try to make sure that we can achieve that ambitious but necessary timeline. The fiscal impact of this change order is $50,000. I want to give a little bit of context about that. So our initial redesign package that we purchased through Final Site was $20,000. That was what was called a Theme Plus package. And again, that was similar to the type of redesign that we've purchased from content management systems in the past. It is a template with a few tweaks. That was purchased when we were trying to figure out, can we meet our stakeholders' needs in a lean way? We were doing our best to do that. And as we were exploring our stakeholder feedback more and more, and we met with our solutions engineer, it became clear that we could not do what our community needs us to do in just the Theme Plus package. Had we continued with that package and then sought a portion of this type of redesign later on, it would be essentially a restart of a redesign fee. So this is a $50,000 change order in order to get us to what is a $70,000 value package, because they're giving us a credit for that initial $20,000 Theme Plus redesign, because we paused that and said, let's not do that if we're not certain that that's what's right for our community. And so what I want us to understand is, if a piece of this very customized redesign is something that we wanted to do later on, that would still be a $70,000 level redesign on top of a $20,000 level redesign. And so when we think about back to that architecture metaphor, if you are doing something in your home that is a necessary renovation that requires you to knock down a wall, and you discover something when you knock down that wall that also requires attention, and you choose to just fix the first thing that you are addressing when you knock down that wall, put it back up, and then you want to attack that second issue later down the line, you've got to knock down the wall again. And so that's really how we want to think about this. So we understand the utility of really addressing the problems that we're seeing as we discover them now and doing the right level of redesign for our community. The funding source for this would be the 23-24 LCAP project 3100, which is community outreach. We believe that this is appropriate funding source, especially given that many of the design improvements that this change order would make possible directly correlate to many of the recommendations that were brought forward by the DLCAP at the end of 2022, 2023. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Director Sanders. Do we have any public comment on this item?
No public comment.
Thank you. Board, do we have questions? Clerk Smith Foltz?
Hi, I do have a couple of questions. You talked about the first redesign that took place and you said that was 2018, 2019. Correct me if I'm wrong.
There was a structural redesign in 2015, 2016, and then what we would consider an aesthetic redesign in 2018, 2019.
Can you tell me how much both of those cost?
I do not know the exact numbers for those. I'd be happy to research that and find out.
Thank you so much. And then second, you were talking about stakeholders and the stakeholders that were involved with the gathering information about what needs to happen. Can you tell me about how many stakeholders were involved?
Yes, I can. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and pull up that data briefly. We had 219 responses to our survey. We had hoped to get even more. I will say this is double the amount of survey responses that we received in 18-19. And one of the things that we did this time around after reviewing the results that we had in 18-19 was we added a lot of questions about job type, demographic group. We were able to break this down a lot more than we were able to previously. And then in terms of our engagement meetings, those were attended sparsely. I'm going to be very transparent and direct about that. But we did try to strategically reach out for those meetings to reach the folks who we didn't reach in the surveys. So then when we saw in the surveys, we didn't hear from as many people in the Richmond area. We tried to make sure that the people who we were getting at the engagement session were folks like our registrars and our SCOWs at our Richmond schools who are in direct conversation with the families who we might not have been reaching with the survey.
Thank you so much. That leads directly into my next question, which I think you answered, but on, you're talking about, we had community and family stakeholders.
Yes.
So, can you tell me a little bit of the difference, the way you guys differentiate between community and family stakeholders? And you reached out to the community by the SCOWs and other community-based organizations. Is that accurate?
So to clarify terms first, when we're thinking about our family stakeholders, those are families who have students currently enrolled in our schools. Our community members might be retired educators. They might be neighbors in the community. They might be volunteers. They're involved in other ways, but they're not current staff and they don't have current students enrolled in our schools.
Thank you for that. My last question is, how does this trickle down to me clicking on a particular school from the home district webpage? So I go to the home district webpage and I click on Hercules High School. Am I going to see the same type of web design for Hercules High School that I see for El Cerrito High School, that I see for
Yes.
Kennedy High School? Okay.
Absolutely. And one of the features of the final site content management system that we think will be a significant improvement, especially given some of what we've seen from our internal stakeholders, from our staff's use of SMORE and other platforms like that. So the way that Final Site Composer, which is the content management system, is built, it's what's called a module system, not an app-based system. If any of you have been on the back end of Blackboard Web Community Manager, in theory, there's a lot more that you can do, but that also means there's a lot more that you have to do. And there's a lot more knowledge and experience that you need to have with the content management system in order to manipulate it. With Final Site Composer, what our school site staff will experience is something where they are primarily contributing the content. They are not responsible for as much design. Some of our staff are going to experience that. That means they are not able to redesign and customize in some ways. We understand that. We also think it's of a great benefit to our community to have consistency across school sites. And it's really going to support us to increase the percentage of our school sites that are actively using our content management system, to have one that's much easier to use and much more accessible for new staff who may not have experience or training using a content management system.
Thank you so very much. President Gonzalez Hoy, I just have comments. I'm complete.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, is there a motion?
I will go ahead and move. Sorry about that. I'll go ahead and move the change order proposal for website content management system redesign in the amount of 50,000.
Smith Folds seconds.
Thank you. Okay, let's move to comments. Clerk Smith Folds, you can start us.
I appreciate the presentation. Thank you so much. And I appreciate your passion and knowledge behind this particular part of communication, because I think it is a very important part of communication. We have to have something that's usable, it's user-friendly, something that gives information that's current information, because now you click on our website and you pop up something from 1972, right? So you have to kind of search for it. I want us to be very clear when we're working with your analogy about the house and the architecture. I get that. Like that's a very clear analogy to me. Like this is, if you tear down one wall, you have to make sure. As a sitting board member, what I hear is, though, we're thinking about tearing down walls, but we can't pay the mortgage, right? So it's one of those things that we have to be very transparent what we do with the money that we have. This is not coming from the mortgage. This is coming from another funding source. So I understand that. But again, that's one of the things that I'm glad that we have transparency in our financial office, that we're being told what everything is going and how we're getting that funding. And I think that we're using this for a good purpose. I just need to, my hope is that I see it when I'm clicking on my individual school sites, and I see it when I'm clicking on the homepage of the web. I'm complete. Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you, Clerk Smith Folds. Any other comments? I just want to thank you for the great presentation. It was very detailed. Okay, we're gonna move to our vote. Clerk Smith Folds, we'll start with you.
Smith Folds, yes.
Trustee Christian,
Yes.
Trustee Reckler,
Reckler, yes.
Trustee Phillips,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. It passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, now we're gonna move to our first discussion item, which is F1, our facilities overview, updating the facilities master plan and summer projects list. Mr. Freeze, pass to you.
Yes, good evening. We have a presentation for you tonight, facilities overview of the facilities master plan from 2016 and our summer project workload. Ms. Mejia Hooper is here tonight to present this to the board.
Good evening, members. Just a moment. I will share my screen. All right, good evening. Thank you so much for having us tonight. We are here to present the annual update of the facility master plan, as well as give an update on the non-bond summer projects. We will cover both these items, including the project's finishing design construction, as well as the next stage of implementation and those summer project update. So for our bond funding, we are currently operating off of two major funding sources. One is the D&E, measures D&E, which relate back to the legacy projects, as well as the facility 2016 facility master plan projects, which are listed on the right, as well as the Measure R funding, which currently is approved for the Kennedy High School Fields Project, as well as master planning for Kennedy High School and Richmond High School. And that's solely the amount of projects that have had budget allocations out of Measure R. As you can see, our 2016 facility master plan implementation is moving on along. We have quite a few completed items listed in gray. We have some still in planning and design as well as construction. And the closeout are mostly completed except for paperwork and or returning funding. For the state facility matching grants, we also actively pursue the state facility matching grants whenever possible. Overall, within the life of the bond program at West Contra Costa, we've received $221,620,188 dollars back from the state to be able to augment our funding. We do have two projects that look to be an immediate funding cycle. So we are on the short list to be able to receive approximately $5 million additional dollars as soon as we make it through the approval process. So for projects in design and under construction, our first project is the lake rebuild. We are currently under construction on phase 1. So you can see here from the aerial is about a month and a half old. So if you go to the site, you'll see a little bit more vertical, but it's a fun image because it really gives you an idea of what's happening on the campus. So you can see 12th Street in the upper right corner. Coming in from 12th Street is Building A, which is the front door, library, admin, community room, staff support, and learning center. So the studs are up. Now we already have roof and sheathing on that building. Building B is your 4th through 6th grade learning spaces, and Building C, which is on this image in showing your trenches for your footings, is the 1st through 3rd grade learning spaces. Overall timeline for this project shows that we're well into construction, and we will be completing phase 1 approximately around spring break next year, and then moving forward to a completion of phase 1B by the end of summer in 2025. We have a special phase for summer work this summer, and we're working on the front parking lot. So when our families are welcomed back to Lake in the coming fall, they will notice that we have a brand new parking lot that will be the entrance off of 11th Street, and the entrance off of 12th Street will be closed. So here are more up-to-date pictures of what the buildings look like. I also posted this morning on Instagram the comparison of the front door of the building to the rendering, because you can really start to see how it actually is getting closer to looking like that. So if you want to check that out, you can look us up at WCCUSD facilities. But Building A is coming along nicely. We have, like I said, we have the sheathing, we have the roof on. I've walked on the roof. It's real. And that's how we took the image of Building B and C. So Building B has wall framing started. They're blocking in and bringing the utilities up. Building C has gone vertical now. So I was there yesterday, and we do have vertical elements on Building C as well as the building pad. For Riverside Critical Needs Project, this is a follow-along project from the soil stabilization. When we completed the soil stabilization project, we displaced the kindergarten playground as well as the garden. So this summer, we are coming back to Riverside and installing the kindergarten play structure, as well as relocating the primary structure to allow enough space. We expanded the blacktop slightly. And we are also included in this is a new garden which really establishes all the major play spaces on the same side of the buildings, kind of internal to the campus. Kennedy High School's field and bleacher project is complete. We were able to open it for graduation this June. There are a few cleanup projects still going along, but in general, we are very pleased that this is open and ready for use. For Collins and Cameron critical needs projects, these are both primarily a heating, ventilation, and air conditioning project. However, when you convert a boiler system to a new HVAC system, you need more electricity. So we ended up doing an upgrade to the electrical system, as well as any project that we complete that goes through the permit process includes accessibility improvements. So all of those are wrapped into both of these projects. Collins, we are doing a lot of the work that is within the classroom this summer to try to limit our impact to the school program. So the ductwork, the equipment, the replacement of the classroom sinks, all of those things are happening this summer. However, the equipment will not be able to be turned on until we get the electrical equipment in place, which will happen hopefully in January of next year. In the meantime, they will be utilizing the existing heating system that will still remain operational. At Cameron, we were able to borrow power from Korematsu, so we will be able to turn on the new system, which is good because some of the units are displacing where the boilers are. So that project we anticipate being completed this fall. Hercules, a middle-sized school, is under construction, which is fantastic. You approved the bid award a little bit ago. We have started by demolishing the portables, the 4 of the middle school portables, as well as installing the temporary fencing around the construction zone. You see here that we've got 3 different renderings of the new building. We are building 4 science labs for the middle school and 4 science labs for the high school, as well as support spaces such as workrooms and restrooms. There are outdoor learning environments associated with the project, which is how you see the larger expanded covered areas. The spine wall is reminiscent of the DNA strands of a human. There's different science elements that are integrated throughout the design, which will make this building fun and speak to the educational program which is happening in and around the new building facility. Shannon Elementary School's critical needs project is a new NPR building, a multi-purpose room. The existing multi-purpose room is a portable on this site with very limited kitchen space and very limited seating. And so the new multi-purpose room will be a fully stick-built building that will also include advanced daylights through clear stories and roll-up doors that will allow indoor and outdoor use and expand its ability to accommodate the school community. We are still in DSA for this project, which is the Division of State Architect. Or no, we just got stamp out from the Division of State Architect and will be bidding this project in another month when the bidding cycle and contractors aren't so busy, so they'll have time to pay attention to our bid and hopefully give us really wonderful price. Next is Highland and Kennedy critical needs projects. Highland, we did complete the replacement of the sanitary sewer line previously. However, we're doing a continuation of that project to upgrade the restroom facilities and connect to that new sewer. We are currently in DSA right now for this project and will hopefully be coming out shortly. The bid and schedule will be dependent on school calendar and phasing. Kennedy's critical needs project was to demolish the 100 and 200 building and relocate the uses within that building to the temporary campus that's on the south side of campus. The architectural drawings have begun. We had a meeting right before this one where we were talking about the relocation of the low voltage with the electrical engineer. So we're working through the design and we'll be moving forward with this project once that is approved. Pinole Valley High School has a hillside repair that needs to be completed. And we're currently in the California Geological Survey's review of that project. For the next phase of implementation, we have a couple projects in the queue, mainly the Kennedy and Richmond modernization projects. This was authorized $1 million of scoping budget, as well as budget allowing that to be able to complete the initial surveying required has been approved by the board, and we are moving forward with that. And the architects are completing their scope of work. We have been what we presented as our next steps in May was a detailed site investigation, which is currently going on. We've had different engineers and the architects out to the sites multiple times. And then the next step after that is the prioritization of desired projects and outcomes. There has been a few initial focus groups taking advantage of the summer school that was taking place at Richmond. It afforded us a rare opportunity to be able to access our parents and students during the summer break, which was awesome. We will continue our outreach and input sessions in the coming fall, and once those are completed and the recommendations are formulated, we'll come forward to the board in late fall, hopefully before the end of the calendar year. STEEGE critical needs project was defined as removing the A building and utilizing the portables on campus to accommodate those functions. We are moving forward with an architect who was able to meet with the school site council before summer started. They are currently working on options. We do plan on also returning to the board this fall with a recommendation of the final scope of this project, as well as potential budget and phasing changes. So those are the projects we have in the works right now and that we're actively moving forward on to try to continue our efforts in communicating these different projects. We have changed our construction newsletter format. Ms. Sanders has been great in giving us access and introducing us to the SMORE platform, which is really helpful, piggybacking on her presentation earlier, to allow us to have our users and people who are looking at our newsletter be able to see it appropriately on not only a computer, but also a cell phone. Because the images and the text scales change automatically. There's also auto translation. We can integrate into Parent Squared, and really the ability to expand those smaller images and add videos is really an exciting features. If board automatically receives our newsletters, but if anybody would like to sign up to them for them, we have a link as well as a QR code on this slide. Please do so. It's a 3-question questionnaire to get you there. I was very pleased to check just before the meeting started, and we have over 2,000 views of the Hercules newsletter. Previously, we have no idea how many people viewed it, but I'm really sure it wasn't 2,000. So I'm super excited that seems to be going well and people are accessing the information. So quick transition to non-bond funding summer projects. All right, so this summer we are replacing 12 play structures and 13 safety surfaces across the district. These are happening at Downer, Kensington, Madera, Stewart, Terra Hills, and Shannon. The Shannon Playground, because we started before the end of school, will be completed before school starts. However, the other playgrounds will still be under construction at the beginning of school. However, we're hoping to get them open as soon as possible. We are completing all of the necessary accessibility upgrades and adjustments to toilet rooms that were required before school starts. So the only thing left that will affect the school sites will be the structure itself. We also have other Washington, Olinda, Verde, and Bayview in the queue. We have approved drawings and designs for those playgrounds and are looking to order the equipment and have them in place or have the ability to bid them out in the spring. Additional projects that we're doing this summer are the exterior painting projects. We have completed the Kennedy School concession stand. If you haven't driven by and seen the eagle from the street, it's there. The other projects, however, are getting affected by a labor dispute. We will continue to keep the board updated as we fully understand the impacts to our project timelines because of that dispute. Additional projects tonight, the turf replacement project for De Anza was on the board calendar for approval to begin construction. That will go through football season. So there's been arrangements made that De Anza's football season this year will be all away games. Shannon portable classroom is in place, and this is making way for where we removed 2 portables and set 2 new ones, making way for the NPR building at that campus. Highland, we're doing additional underground improvements for electrical and water infrastructure. Korematsu, we have the gym floor, which you just reviewed. Cameron, we're doing a roof replacement utilizing non-bond funds while we have the campus not occupied. Also, the changeover from one mechanical system to another allows us to patch and repair the roofs where and appropriately roof around the new penetrations that occur anytime you adjust your HVAC systems. Madera has a gutter replacement project that is repairing gutters that are no longer serviceable. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much. Do we have any public comment?
We have one public comment.
Okay, if we could please put up the timer.
Zoom user, can you please unmute yourself and state your full name for the record?
Yes, my name is Kate Burkhart from Richmond. It's great to see all these new projects moving along, and I hope that the students will enjoy them. We're grateful to the voters of the district for approving the bonds that have allowed these projects to go on. And it's good news for everybody. Thank you.
That concludes public comment.
Thank you so much. Thank you for a caller. Board, let's move to questions. Who would like to get us started? Trustee Reckler, go ahead.
Okay, I don't have to get us started if somebody else wants to go first.
It's okay. I saw your hand first.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. Yeah, wow, there was a lot in there. Okay, aside from the play structures and the painting, is everything else roughly on time and on schedule?
Oh, that's always a hard question, isn't it? As far as what we know at the moment, yes.
That's fair enough.
In construction, unforeseen is a terrifying word, but it happens too often.
True. Next is, I didn't note any investigation into HVAC systems. So I believe my recollection is from that October meeting that we had, that there were a number of systems that were at end of life. Can you refresh my memory on that discussion?
So we did have an assessment done of our HVAC systems and trying to understand our ability to add air conditioning. And quite a few of our sites, I do not have the exact number, are technically at the end of life as far as the age of the units go. However, that does not necessarily mean they will stop working tomorrow.
Okay, but there is work. Okay. Next is combined energy saving / climate change / building resource efficiently and being gentle on the earth. And whenever I speak to youth or anyone, there is a constant chatter about climate change. You know, being careful about resources that are used, building very efficient buildings and buildings that are gentle on the earth. In general, I don't think I've ever heard a discussion about that. What's the viewpoint, or what do you guys do, or how do you consider issues like that?
So in the state of California, there's what you call the Green Code, and the Green Code requires quite a bit of sustainable design. So just for our projects to be approved in general, we have to meet those requirements. That also involve Title 24, which evaluates how much energy we are using for our buildings. So that's a significant part of the environmental, or the lack of environmental impact that we're trying to achieve, are accomplished through the Green Code requirements. One of the decisions that were made at Lake was that it's an all-electric site, so we are not installing natural gas at Lake, knowing that that's part of the direction we're going, but also the environmental impact that come with that. There is a level of analysis that has to be accounted for long-term longevity and just overall approach to new technologies, but we continue to press our architects and engineers for the most appropriate design choices when it comes to sustainability.
And then just as a brief follow-up, is there more that you can do in energy savings, or
there is always more that you can do, right? I mean, we don't go net zero. Some districts have chosen to do that, but it is a significant investment. And so you have to balance out the amount of funding that would be required to achieve some sort of initiative like that versus kind of common sense solutions that make big impacts, but don't necessarily affect the cost of construction.
okay, thank you, I'm complete.
Thank you, Trustee Reckler. Trustee Phillips, go ahead.
Thank you. This question may not be for you, but it is in regard to Lake. Has there been any progress on the potential renaming of that school?
I'm going to defer to the table.
Right, do you want to? I can jump in or you can jump
Yeah,
in.
go ahead and I'll jump in.
Okay, so in keeping with our board policy, we did determine if there was community interest, because that is one of the criteria. What was determined in that community engagement was that there is not yet interest at this time to rename that full school. However, that does not rule out the possibility of a dedication. So I will be following up with you directly about other opportunities to honor the individual whose name came up. There are ways that we can do a dedication that is not a full renaming of the school.
Thank you. How was it determined that the level of, how was it determined that the level of interest is not there?
I will let facilities speak to that. I believe you communicated directly with the school about the community engagement process. I can also pull up the data we have.
I do know that the Principal Williams conducted a survey that resulted in the interest to remain Lake as the strongest response overwhelmingly. However, I do not have the details of how that survey was conducted.
Do you know how many folks the survey went to?
I do not know off the top of my head. Oh,
I do have that. So we do have, there were 139 votes total. 103 of those votes were to retain the name of Lake.
In the presentation, there was a comment about Hercules's, I believe it was Hercules's newsletter, that 2,000 some odd people had actually reviewed the newsletter. Is it possible for us to actually put something in the Lake newsletter, the construction newsletter that goes out to the wider community regarding the potential of renaming that school? The reason that I say it is because 139 folks out of a city, it's not that many people. And the results may actually end up the exact same, which is fine.
I think that could be perfectly appropriate. And one of the things that we are also working to do across facilities and communications and with cabinet is to draft an AR. Currently, we have a board policy about the renaming of facilities. We don't have an administrative regulation. And so one of the things that internally we've decided we need to do is to make sure that there's an appropriate administrative regulation in place so that as we are conducting these processes, that there's some clear alignment. And absolutely, we can push that back out. I think that's reasonable.
Thank you.
and just for further clarification, Hercules, because it covers 2 campuses, got up to the 2,000, but Lake was approximately 500.
That's a lot more than 100.
It is, but just so the expectations are set.
I got it. Thank you.
Do you have any further questions?
I don't. Thank you.
Clerk Swinfolds, go ahead.
Thank you. Hercules is fantastic and we like to read and look at things all the time. So, it'll probably be 2,000 anyway, so we're great. Here's my questions. The money that you get back, the $5 million, $5,089,995, the money that you get back, do y'all allocate it somewhere or do y'all say, yo, board, you got $5 million, where do you want to put it?
So those funds that come back from the state reimbursement go right back into the building fund. So no projects are allocated out of there unless the board approves those projects. But if we recall from the 2016 master plan, the original budget of $181 million always had a shortage. I believe that began with $164 million. And there was a shortage, but the state refund dollars that have come back in project savings have what funded the future project, which is the rebuilding of the lake and the supplicant projects going on in the critical needs project. So that's where those state dollars go. They go back to the building fund.
The 5 million goes back into a bucket that says bonds, right? Okay, which bonds? Because we have a couple of them. Does it go into what, D&E, or does it go into R, or do we get to tell you what bucket to put it in?
They actually come back as state savings. They come into the bond program. We refer to the projects because they're allocated out of D&E. They don't necessarily go into the D&E bucket, but the projects were approved within D&E, and that's how the dollars get assigned out.
Okay, so what you're saying is y'all take the money and use it for the D&E projects, even if it doesn't go directly into the D&E bucket. You have kind of already said that any money we get back, we use it for the D&E projects. Is that accurate?
That is correct, because those are the projects that were approved by the board.
Okay, and then my second question is, what is your department's understanding about the money in Measure R? Let me be very clear. Let me be a little clearer. Does your department understand that that money, Measure R, is going to go to the building of the two high schools that we have talked about? The majority of the board has said, Kennedy and Richmond High School.
We're clear that the board wants those dollars to go towards Richmond and Kennedy rebuild projects. And the three projects that are approved by the board were Richmond, Kennedy, and Stage.
Perfect,
that
thank
order.
you. My third question is play structures. Do you take into account the diversity and abilities when you pick the play structure equipment? So if I am a student who is visually impaired, if I'm a student who is my mobility is impaired, am I still able to use the play structure materials that you invest in at our school sites? Is that a clear question?
I'll defer that to Ellen, but I believe the state requires that we have different components that meet all those different criteria.
That is correct. We do meet the minimum, or we exceed the minimum requirements that are required by code for accessibility. But we've also expanded, trying to reach out to two of our school sites are going to receive communication boards at Downer and Terra Hills, which helps the nonverbal students interact. We are also implementing a few other pieces that we haven't before at those schools because they are serving our high needs students and are very curious to find out how they are used and utilized. So we are kind of prototyping some pieces this summer to really see how they work and whether they're effective for our student population.
Thank you so very much. I would love to know the results, like how often it's used, the kids are engaging in it, the teachers find it to be very useful. That would be really cool to know. My final question. What filter or what lens do you filter projects through to make sure, because we're such a big district, that every area is covered? How are the schools kind of hierarchied in like this, we're going to do this summer, we're going to do that summer? I asked you in the one-on-ones and it was a good answer, so I would love to hear it out loud again.
Certainly, we pick our projects based upon the need of the district and the condition of the school sites. We use our surveys that come back from our maintenance department as well that give us input to the safety conditions of our schools and which ones rise to the higher priority that need to be addressed.
Thank you so much. And you also talked about, your department talked about, okay, this is what we're going to concentrate on this year. Is that accurate, Mr. Freeze?
That is accurate. So as you saw the list of play structures, we have a number going on this year. We have a number of those that are rolling over to next year as well as the painting projects that we're working on. We try to implement so many of those every year to make sure we're staying up with the upkeep of the exterior buildings. And then we'll be looking at paving at our sites. So
Thank you so very much. President Gonzalez-Hoy, I am complete. I just have comments.
Thank you. For my questions, most of them have been asked, but have we sent a newsletter to the Richmond, Kennedy, and Stage communities about the timeline and the current work that's happening at those schools? I'm sorry, not the current work, but the work that's going to happen for the rebuilds. Have we sent a newsletter in the last couple of months?
We have not. We're hoping to get a little bit closer to school start. July is always kind of a dangerous time to send information out because we're not sure how many people are really ready for it. We also are still working with our architects to structure the engagement process with each one of them. So as soon as we have a little bit more concrete information, we will be sending out a newsletter to those campuses.
Thank you. And what's our plan if the labor dispute continues? What's our plan for the painting of the schools and the other projects that are happening this summer that might not get done?
So for those projects that may not get completed this year, depending on when the labor dispute is resolved, we'll have to make the decision on which ones of those projects we're going to push forward with, which ones that we can try to complete during the year, and which ones we're just going to have to cancel those contracts and rebid that again in the spring and come back next year to complete those.
Thank you so much. Okay, board, let's move to our comments. Clerk Smith Folds, we can start with you.
I was at the CBOC meeting board and they talked about how to better the communication. And one of the things that they talked about was sending these newsletters to the PTAs and the PTOs and then having them kind of just be distributed that way. And then they talked about, well, if there's no PTA or PTO, how do you get that information out? And they mentioned SSCs, they mentioned administrators doing it. So there is a effort to push this information forward. I think that looking at the communities that are not clicking on the newspaper or newsletter or actively looking at the newsletter and then finding other strategies to reach out to that community, maybe through their scouts, maybe through whatever the means are, would benefit, because I think that facilities are one of the main things that our students utilize. They go into these buildings every day for 180 days every year, and they need to feel as if they are taken care of from the inside out. So the buildings are a very important thing along with our teachers and our curriculum, but buildings, we should not take for granted how powerful having a good school building to go to. Mr. Freeze, I would like to push your office to continue to use an equity lens when looking at all of these projects. Because we are such a big district, we have to spread that love out and make sure that every area feels the love and every area understands that their students are important and their facilities and their buildings are important. President Gonzalez-Hoy, I believe that that is all of my comments. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Clerk Smith-Folds. Anyone else have comments? Trustee Reckler, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It should be very easy to put the newsletters in Parent Square. I guess that's totally possible. And then if you need any PTA emails, we can get some, spam them. And then if you remember and you're going out to a site for a visit, I would not mind going if my schedule is matches when you're going out. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Reckler. So for my comments, first, I just want to commend you all for the newsletters. I have been reading them every time they come out, and they're great. Very informational. I'm not surprised that more people are clicking on them because they're really well done. So thank you for that. I do think that we need to send a communication to the Kennedy, Richmond High, and Stige communities. I get a lot of questions about the reconstruction. I'm sure my colleagues do as well. I'm sure you all do, but just so that everybody knows kind of where we are on our timeline, the scope of the project. And then I would love to see also, how can people get involved? We get that question a lot, like, how can I get involved in the project? If we could add that on there as well, I think that would be really helpful. And then I really agree with Trustee Reckler. I would love to go to Lake with you all one of these days to go see how the construction's going. It's one thing to see it in the picture. It's another one to walk on the roof, right? I mean, I'm not going to walk on the roof with you, but I would love to just go see how it's going because it looks great. Thank you so much for that update. Okay, board, we're now going to move to F2, which is our last discussion item, the Early Literacy Support Block Grant. I'll pass it to our CEO, Ms. Neely Johnson.
Okay, thank you. We have Allison Makala, who is our coordinator of professional learning and special projects, and was very involved in the initiation of this grant in 2020. And so she will be giving us the update. This is the Early Literacy Support Block Grant, and we have 7 schools involved. And so she has a presentation for us. Thank you.
Good evening. Well, I wasn't involved in the very beginning, but I know a thing or two about it. So hopefully I can give you a broad idea. And I have till 10:30 tonight, right? Since I'm last. So yes, my name is Allison Makala, and in August, September, October, I filled in when Christy was gone and before Liz was hired. And so that's the experience I have with the ELSP grant. And we need to give you an update. So you've heard this the past couple of years. You know that we are ending year 2 and heading into year 3 of this block grant. The CDE specifies that the school board be provided an update annually. And so here I am to do that for you tonight. We're going to give you a review of which sites are there, how much money they are receiving. And then we've attached the reports that they need to file at the end of each year with a summary. So we'll just do the summary and not go till 10:30, but you can read at your reading pleasure, I'm sure bedside reading, the literacy action plans for each of those sites. Next slide, please. So the 7 sites are Bayview, Coronado, Downer, King, Lincoln, Neestrom, and Steege. And these schools were selected based on the 2019 SBAC scores for 3rd graders. They were selected to get this grant and therefore an influx of money to be innovative about how we teach literacy for our kids. Next slide, please. So the school, this is the slide that shows the amounts of money that each of the schools got, and it's based on enrollment. So based on the number of enrolled students in 3rd grade in the 2018-19 school year. So that was how the grant was calculated. And you can see that for most of our schools, they're right in that tier 2 category, but for one of our schools, it's a pretty substantial amount of money. Next slide, please. So the really big goal across all the sites, and you'll see as we go through each 7, is ultimately to improve students' ability to read. Each school team creates an action plan and a corresponding budget that's approved by their SSC. Closing out this year, each site reviewed their current action plan and data, and then they revised accordingly for this 3rd and final year of the grant. The actions listed support goals and reflect the budget expenses. Across the sites is a universal emphasis on foundational skills. I think you'll see that each site has, that's where they've chosen to focus, is on explicit instruction around foundational skills, phonics, and phonemic awareness. And all our sites used funds for literacy coaches, for professional development, and for materials like curriculum, assessment tools, and other resources. Next slide. So let's see. So our LEA, how did our district support this effort? Well, centrally, our our finance office supported in a huge way to keep track of the funding, make sure that it aligned with our plans, and then provided the quarterly reports necessary to the state. We also participated in learning walks that provided feedback and on both on what they were seeing in classrooms, but also on the actions and the goals themselves. The district held literacy coach community of practice. So each, as I said, each site has hired a literacy coach, and we maintained a community of practice for those folks. And then the district provided professional development for SIPs and the supplemental instructional materials that go along with that. Next slide. So here's an example, Bayview. And Bayview saw some good gains. They're definitely focused on assessment. And as a result, they're going to continue implementing the current plan that they have. They find that it's working and they're going to keep it. So the reports there are not much different from what you saw last year. Coronado is really looking to dig deeper into progress monitoring and to set up peer observation. So opportunities for teachers to go into each other's classrooms, to see and learn from each other. Downer is taking a deeper dive into fluency and comprehension. King has had a different principal every year of this grant. And so part of what they really want to do is greater alignment, structure, rigor to their program, even beyond phonics, but also including writing and read aloud. So I think that their focus there will be really on what have we done and where are we headed in a consistent fashion. Lincoln saw great gains and is expanding the core knowledge language arts curriculum that they started. And they will be purchasing Amplify Boost for their DLI students. Nystrom is continuing their walk to read model, also seeing gains, strong gains from their work. They have a heavy emphasis on professional learning and will continue that, as well as hiring an intervention teacher to provide targeted instruction for next year. And lastly, Stige is going to replicate that walk to read model at their site and do that during the time that they would use the phonemic awareness curriculums, either SIPS or Hegarty. So apart from the site plans that you see, the CDE also provides ongoing technical support. They provide coaching and training for our literacy coaches and learning opportunities for both our teachers and our leaders. Centrally, we will support our site teams to evaluate their goals and their plans so that continued growth can be made through the efforts and investments that they've made through the grant funding. We will help them to identify the high leverage practices and strategies and to build foundational skills as well as a love for reading and the other pieces that go with a whole literacy package. And we do this through a focused community of practice that includes continued professional learning built around research and learning science, and learning walks and or sort of instructional rounds of sorts to identify great practices. I think that's all we got. Sorry, it didn't go to 10:30.
Thank you so much. Do we have any public comment on this item?
We have one public comment. Zoom user, please unmute yourself and state your name for the record.
I'm sorry, it was a mistake to have my hand raised. I pass. Good presentation though. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the presentation. Board, we're gonna, no, don't go yet though, because there might be questions. Board, do we have any questions? Yeah, trustee Recca, would you like to, I'm sorry, I looked at you first. Clerk Smith, go ahead.
Can you tell me more about how the schools, the 7, talk to each other? So some of them are sharing the same model. Others, you mentioned learning walks, but learning walks are typically just the admin, correct? Or am I wrong?
Not necessarily. We would hope that we'd be able to include teachers along the whole team of this early childhood effort, right? It can't be just the admin. It's got to be it's more powerful with more people in there. And the reality is the year gets going and you're short a teacher and the admin's teaching in a classroom. But they do get a chance to talk and share ideas, and they email back and forth and ask, what are you doing for this? And then when we get to these report checkpoints in particular, we hold a Zoom meeting and people, or office hours, and people jump on and say, well, what are you guys doing about this? And what have you seen? And well, we're doing this, come and look. And so in many ways, it has fostered a collaboration of sorts that I think we could do more of.
Thank you so much. My next question is, how are our most marginalized students trending with these models? Are we seeing that they are becoming proficient in early reading skills? Are we following them kind of throughout the program? Like, what are we seeing trending with our most marginalized students? Those being our Black students, our special needs students, our brown students, our ELL students. What are we seeing? What trends are we seeing with these particular models that these 7 schools are implementing?
Well, I will confess I'm the presenter. And so I've looked at the very surface level of that data, and the trends at most sites look really good. I think that what you're raising is a very good, important thing for me to take back, because I wonder the same, like, how are we looking? When are we going to dig deep to see what's working? This is our last year. So we need to parse out what's working, what's not, and are we really serving the kids we want to? And what are we seeing in the whole picture? Like, maybe they can decode, but are we creating readers? Do they see themselves as readers? I don't know. I think there's a lot we need to delve into. And I think Ms. Neely Johnson agrees. These are the things we need to do in collaboration with our sites this year to look at how we move forward with that.
Can I also add just something too? So thank you for asking that question. So one of the things we do have is a new data system, but we're also getting our SBEC data. And so we'll have an opportunity to really look at all of our data, but for specifically these schools and for students who did take the assessment in 3rd grade, how they did in terms of this going into year 3. So we will be able to at least see some, our hopes is that we see some improvement in that data. And so we can disaggregate it, and that's information we could bring back.
Thank you so much. My final question is, are you compiling a list of strategies that work in these 7 schools, or work with these programs, and you're then going to disseminate those to the other elementary schools in the district? Like, is there a list of, if you do this, if you send home packets that say read 30 minutes a day, then you will see a growth with your child's reading skills or abilities? Or do we have something like that in place? I'm complete.
So one of the things that, I'm new coming back into this department, but one of the things that we've had in the past was really kind of best practices. And so really going back to that, and Ms. Macklow was talking about, really having opportunities that when we're doing these walks, highlighting our classrooms that are making gains and seeing some of those strategies, and then sharing those strategies district-wide. But she also talked about the community of practice. And I know we did attempt to have 3. We had 2 successful community of practices, but doing more of that as well.
Thank you so much, President Gonzalez-Hoy. I'm complete. I just have comments. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. Trustee Reckler, go ahead.
Thank you. And I have a lot of questions, so I don't know how many you want to, allow me to ask, but I'll just.
Tonight, we don't have a question limit because we had such short agenda. But, I don't think we all want to be here till 10:30, so just be thoughtful.
I promise. we won't
But
be
you can
here
ask
until
many,
10:30.
however many you are.
Okay, so thank you for the presentation. Nice to see you. And just to the audience and for everybody else, usually there's a session before the board meeting where board members can kind of get into the weeds and then use this to kind of pull out the big chunks from those sessions. That did not happen for me this week because I was traveling and I couldn't make time for it. So I'm going to ask a lot of things that'll probably need follow-up, and I think that's fine. Um, so, how how is the district collecting all of the data and comparing progress on these 7 schools to determine what's working? Is there like a formal way or system to do that?
I don't think that's been done, but I see that as a critical piece that needs to happen this year. And I don't think it hasn't been done because it didn't need to be done. I think just with so much transition, like we mentioned, the change in principals at one of the school, but we've also had a change in director of literacy overseeing it. And so I'll just be really honest with you. I think that's an area that we need to really emphasize this year before we're done, to look at what's worked, what's not, and how do we know?
And then, yes, because there should be a sustainability plan, because now we're in the last
Exactly.
year of this. So, what
Yep.
steps are going to be taken to sustain the work? And I think probably most schools have a coach, or they're using the money to fund a coach. And so when those funds expire, what happens next so that they can maintain the work?
Exactly.
And then another question that I've talked about before about having a little session on is about assessments, because it's not really something that I understand all that well. And I think it might be good for everybody just to level set. But it looks like most of these schools are using DIBELS. And so I'm curious, like, why do you use DIBELS? And I remember back when Dr. Harder was here, we used to use DIBELS, but now we're using iReady, and I think we're using a little star. So like what, like between all these assessments, what are they used for? Why? And what data do you get out of it? How do you use it? How does it drive instruction and practice?
Good question. And one that comes up actually in ed services quite a bit. I think Sonia can probably speak to this too, but it's difficult as a district when we have so many different things. And so we are wanting to really kind of narrow in and have some uniformity. DIBELS absolutely was something we used in the past, and with this group has started, it speaks to what we were talking about earlier with the community of practice. One starts using it and another says, well, this is giving us good information about phonemic awareness or something like that. DIBELS is a more in-depth data than a STAR or, and I'm not as familiar with iReady. What I would love to do is take your question and have us revisit that when Elizabeth Henry is back and can speak, and maybe she and Morgan could speak more articulately to the different assessments that are chosen.
Yeah.
Can I add that this year coming up, we will be doing K-8 iReady. And so that is something that we have decided, because as a district, you use data or different platforms for different things. And so DIBELS is not something that we say people cannot use. We're going to have an assessment calendar, which actually should be coming out next week. And we'll make sure that all board members get a copy of that. But we have the assessments that we're saying are mandatory in terms of as a district that we want to collect as an LEA, and then we will have recommended. And so we want to have sites to have that autonomy if they want to use some of those for their formative assessments. As a principal, I use DIBELS I would say every 3 weeks because I had a intervention program. So I use it every 3 weeks to really monitor progress, because we were really fluid in terms of moving students to the next level. So I would say that right now, we know we have a lot of assessments. We really are trying to do more alignment, but we're not also saying that people cannot use other assessments if they see fit for maybe their individual program. But as a district, we will be moving K-8 to iReady for next year for the data that we collect to, do some of our presentations, like our data presentations that we've done in the past for you all. But I think one of the things that I have charged the new department with, remember, I just started 3 weeks ago, is also talking about a description of what those assessments do. Because I think sometimes people do get confused, and we want to make sure that we have what's sort of mandated, but then also give schools some autonomy to choose on things that they find that they need for their specific strategies that they're using. So that should be coming out very soon.
So back to Dibbles versus iReady. My understanding is that Dibbles is free versus iReady, which is costly. So,
Well,
And-
iReady has an instructional component. And so this year we are getting that paid for. We are going to be looking at how we're going to be funding it in the future. But many times when you get Dibbles, you get that assessment, you see where the student is, but then teachers either create based on the curriculum, or maybe they're curating some strategies to use with students to get them to that next level. Whereas when iReady is given as an assessment, it puts a student on an instructional path, and then that it gives you the lesson. And so students can actually have it more individualized in terms of what they need. So that is something we will be using. And you're right, Dibbles is free and people are still continuing to use it. I think anytime as a teacher, I use a lot of different assessments to sometimes, find out where my students were. But as a district, we really are going to, I would say, highlight and say, these are the assessments we're using, and then we'll have the recommended as well. And then we'll give you I'd say a nice overview on what those different assessments are used and why they're used.
and so with the Dibbles data, does it tell us anything overall? Are there big things that we know? Because I think it's interesting that all of these schools are using Dibbles.
So one of the things with Dibbles is that you're working one-to-one with a student. So you're listening to them, and it gives you a good sort of measure in time of some sounds and the phonemic awareness of a student. So other sites are using running records to do the same thing. You're sitting, you're listening, you're getting an idea of where kids are. I would agree with Sonia, because when I was at Dover and we used Dibbles, what we found is it gave us an idea of where kids were, but it didn't go in depth enough. So then if you wanted to know what a child really needed, you had to listen more. The fact is our kids are human, and so it's a little trickier. No assessments are really perfect. And so this is why you see a battery of things, because an online assessment works for one kid, but maybe not for another kid. Or, Dibbles might give you a good overview and help you make decisions as a whole site about what to do next. But if you really want to get at it, you need to sit and listen, sidle up next to them and listen to what they're doing, or you'll see the BPST as another assessment listed for some of them. And that's a lot of our primary teachers love that, because it's very specific about the letters. They know the sounds of the letters. So I think we should come back with a more in-depth response to your question, because it's a good one. Like, how do we know that we're making, what you're really asking is, how do we know our kids are making the gains, and how do we make decisions about what's next?
Exactly.
Good question. Yeah, good question.
And then finally, if I could just ask one more on money. I don't know if you're going to know the answer to this too, but does anybody have carryover? Is everybody spent fully to their yearly allotment? if people have money left over, what do they do with it? Or why, or?
So they got to carry it over into next year, but I don't know if that's the case. So we'll find out what happens after year 3.
To my understanding for year 3, that the goal is that we would be spending the money, but I have to double check, but my understanding is that we're allocating, that's why the state asked us to do that sort of progress report, and that we spend the money on the strategies that we've, said we're doing. And sometimes in these cases, we always can advocate, but many times if all the money is not spent, it is returned. So right now we're in 2, just even in the department I just left, we had to spend all of the money by June 30th. So whatever you don't spend, the state keeps.
Okay, that's it. And then I just have a couple of comments.
Thank you. Okay, why don't thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All my questions were asked, so we'll move to comments from the board. Trustee Phillips, and then we'll just head this way after that.
Thank you very much for the presentation. There were some words in the presentation that I really liked hearing. So I liked the word uniformity. I also liked the word alignment. There are also some words from the presentation that I've been hearing for years, and they frustrate me. So I'll tell you the words that I've been hearing for years, and they frustrate me, but there's one in particular, and the word's autonomy. And let me say why it's autonomy. It's not because that I believe that, one size fits all, because I know that it doesn't. But what I've noticed over the years here is that our sites have had a lot of autonomy. And the reason that has always been given for that autonomy is that one size doesn't fit all, and that we need to have this autonomy because it's best for our kids. But if we look at the progress that our children have made over the years, that really doesn't hold up. When I first got to the board, I used to talk about what I would call the Kensington way, because there were some things at Kensington that I really liked and that I wanted to see replicated. There are some things at some other schools, you might say the Montalban way. So Kensington's not the only school that falls into that category. But when Trustee Smith-Folds asked about the list, in my mind, I was like, go, 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 yes. And then I heard the response was, in the past, we've had best practices. The issue that I've had, and I think that that's great, and I think that the sharing is great. Sharing is another good word that I like to hear from the presentation. But the issue that I've had in the past is that things that work were never really required. And what I mean by that is, if you develop this list, right, that Trustee Smith-Folds was talking about, or you do these walkabouts with the different schools and they're all visiting each other, we can see something, Site A can see something. Let me take that back. Administration and everybody there can identify something that's great, something that's tested, something that's proven, something that we know if you do this, you will get this. And nobody's required to do it. Sometimes people will do it because they want to, but a lot of times people don't do it at all because they say, well, I'm a professional too, and you are. I'm not taking that away from you. But the autonomy, I get why people want it. It's not working. And it's something that we've been doing for years, decades, generations. And so my question becomes, what does winning look like? I have a definition of winning. I'll say that during the comments, depending on what our time is, but what does it look like? And if we all can come to some kind of agreement as to what it looks like, and I'm talking about success for kids, right? But if we can all come to some kind of agreement as to what that looks like, at what point, and maybe this would even be better if Dr. Hurst were here right now, but like, at what point do we say, we know A, B, and C works? I'm not trying to disrespect you, Principal X, but A, B, C, and D work, and you will do these things. And if you're not going to do these things, you have to, or if you don't want to do these things, you have to come to the superintendent, or you have to come to the board, and you have to say, I don't want to do X because of Y. And this is what we're going to do. And this is why we're going to do it, because it's been working. But to give some kind of justification, we did a curriculum vote a few years back. And in that vote, the board voted one way, and I was the lone wolf, which I tend to do sometimes, right? But my vote was essentially that the curriculum that is being recommended, it might have been like Lucy Calkins, but the curriculum that's being recommended, everybody has to do it. But if you're able to come to the board and say, we want to do this, and make your presentation as to why, you could, if it was approved, so that there was some kind of out if needed be. But moving to uniformity, and I'm going to close, but moving to uniformity doesn't just mean highlighting ones that, you know, we know work. It means actually making people do it unless they have something better. So whatever winning looks like to me, or to Leslie, or Demetrio, or Sonia, or O3, or Jamila, whatever winning looks like, the question becomes this: are we willing to do what is required to get there, even if that means pissing somebody off because we require them to do something that we actually know works, and we've been watching them do something for years that, if we were being really honest, we know doesn't. So thank you for the presentation. Thank you for all of your answers. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Trustee Reckler, you can do your comments.
Thank you. So thank you for the presentation. I can send in some of my questions that I would have submitted earlier. And what I'd like to see over this year is a real vision and plan around literacy. We started that last year by prioritizing it, and I'd like to see it just be the focal point of the year, with a real vision and a plan, and the board entertaining a number of study sessions around all different facets of literacy. You know, there are researchers that can come and talk about literacy. We can have a session on assessments. We can have I mean, there's countless ways that we as a board can explore that and learn about it and educate the public and everybody else. And there are people in states, look at Mississippi, at what they're doing. They're doing great work in literacy. There are states in California, there are school districts in California that are doing great jobs. None of it is easy, but they've got a plan and they've got goals, and they measure them, and they come back and they reassess, and then they just keep going. So it's absolutely something that we can do. And then what I think is really important about this work, since we're now coming into year 3, is what worked. What are the big, strands that worked everywhere? Who did things that didn't work? Assessments, like pull together the data from the work that's already been done and then figure out how to sustain it, because now we're at the end, unless Do they think they're going to pitch any more money? Do we know?
I mean, I'm one of those people that is always advocating for the state to pitch in more money. But I also know as a former principal, many times I was a school that was program improvement and I moved my school out of program improvement. So what that meant was that I had a lot of money. And then once I left program improvement, I didn't have as much money. But we did create a sustainable way
No.
that we continue to provide some of the strategies and some of the things that we were doing. And so we looked at how we reallocated the resources we did get. We had Title I funds and pretty much at that time LEP funds, and we just looked at how we allocated. And so as a principal, I said I wanted to have a literacy coach because that was important. For everything else, field trips and whatever, PTA, I went out and I raised money to do some of those other things that sometimes our teachers want to do. But what was important was the instructional piece. And so that's where we pushed and placed our money. So yes.
Yeah, so sustainability, what do we do next?
I think sustainability, that's part of the central office's responsibility, working alongside our leaders and their instructional leadership teams to look at what would be feasible and what is sustainable. And I want to connect it to some of the work that we've been doing in CSACE. You know, we're really looking at now coming together and looking at all of these different things we've had. We've had grants for this literacy. We've had the CSACE funds, and just looking at some of the work that we've done and to, like you said, really look at to see what is really working and then create a framework to say, this is the model. And so that is something we will be looking at for sure this year.
Great. All right, that's it. I'm all done. Thank you.
Thank you. Clerk Smith Foltz.
There's a couple of things. First, thank you so much for the presentation. Also, I want to advocate for all teachers. We don't learn how to teach kids how to read. We're not literacy teachers. I was an English teacher. I expect them to already come in knowing how to read, and I'm teaching them comprehension, and I'm teaching them how to write an essay. I'm teaching them other things. So we have, as a board, and I know at the district level, you guys understand that we are not literacy teachers. If you want to teach literacy, you need to have literacy instructors because it's a skill. It's a skill to teach it, and it's a skill that we're trying to teach students. The other thing is we need to make sure that we're crossing modalities when we're doing this. And it looks like these 7 schools are doing that very well. But there's the call and response. There's the way of these kids can memorize a song so quickly, even at the age of 2 or 3. So we know that there's memorization abilities there. But I have to say, if you want to see something done correct, go to a SPED classroom. The amount of posters and flashcards and different ways of reaching children, it's right there in every one of our SPED classrooms. The other thing is I was at a TK, I volunteered at a TK class last year, and the TK teacher was teaching ASL at the same time. And she was teaching a second language at the same time. These kids are so able to soak it in when they're young. So starting at that preschool level, that TK level, and just inundating them with words and music and all the things that help turn that side of the brain on is very important. I have 3 different daughters. They all read at 3 different levels. So it's one of those things that you can be in the same family and your reading skills can be very different. I read to every last one of them, at night. I did all the things that they told us to do. But if we don't teach parents how to catch those red flags early on in reading, catch the dyslexia red flag, catch the processing red flag, catch your students not able to respond back to you what you ask them about a story. If we don't teach parents to have parental confidence, then we get a kid in 3rd or 4th grade and we're like, oh, I didn't even know that was something I was supposed to be looking for. Johnny did that all the time. I didn't know that was a red flag to dyslexia. I didn't know that was a red flag to slower processing. So as a district, we need to educate our parents at every single level with every single part of our curriculum, especially reading, because we know that it really is fundamental. The other thing is I love that some of our schools have those book vending machines. If you haven't went to a school with a book vending machine, they are one of the best things that you can see. Also, a lot of our schools have the little mailboxes free books go in. Aloni has this. Aloni's a great example. Books go in, books go out, but at every site, and I'm gonna reference Aloni again, there needs to be a reading champion. Someone at that school that reading is their thing. Aloni has a teacher that hustles. She does everything around literacy. She got the books in the, the library. She got the books in the little literacy mailbox thing. So we need to have champions in our schools that this is their thing. They want to make sure that every kid is able to read by the age of 3rd grade and then fall in love with reading past 3rd grade. Reading is not something that we just want them to have the skill, but we want them to fall in love with the action of reading. Again, staff, thank you so very much. The most marginalized people have to be the ones that we center the work on, and then everything will flow from that. So if we can get it right with our most marginalized group of students, then everything else will flow from that, and everybody's boats will rise in that tide. I am complete. Thank you.
Thank you so much. For my comments, I wanted to concentrate a little bit on investment and actually the word sustainability that you talked about, CAO Neely Johnson. I think that one of the problems that we face in this district, that actually many districts our size face, is that we invest in something like a curriculum, like Trustee Phillips mentioned, Lucy Calkins, right? And we train teachers and we invest in PD and we invest in books for 4 or 5 years, and then we switch, right? And then that investment goes away, right? And last meeting, I was talking about how my wife brought home all her curriculums, right, to work this summer, because that's what teachers do, right? And I actually had to move them to the garage because there were so many, because we have so many curriculums that it was actually really in the way of anywhere in the house, right? And I know that many teachers face that. I think that our challenge is that we have a lot of resources for teachers. A lot of them don't come with the support, right, on how to utilize them correctly. They may come over time, and then the new shiny thing comes out, right? And Lucy Calkins doesn't do this, right, or doesn't do that, right? And then what happens, like what Trustee Phillips mentioned, certain schools start moving away from a curriculum without district approval, right? And they do their own thing. And sometimes that leads to innovation, right? And sometimes that leads to good change. And sometimes that just leads to lack of uniformity, right? And lack of supports and lack of ability to collaborate, right? And then people leaving because, hey, I invested in this, learning this tool, and I moved to the school and it's gone away, right? Because that's not what they utilize. I mention all this because, one, I don't have a solution for that, right? I don't know if uniformity is the right solution, but because I don't want to take the innovation of finding new ways to improve our schools. But I do think that it's a huge challenge that we have, because I also feel that you could be a 10-year teacher, a 20-year teacher in our district, and they're always having to learn a new tool, right, that we find. And iReady, to be honest, is like a good example of that, right? I actually really like iReady as a tool. I saw it, and I really, as a bilingual teacher, I was like, oh, I wish I would have had this in my classroom. But it's, again, one more thing teachers have to learn, right? And let's be honest, we don't have the time or the money for that, right? So how do we utilize our tools, find best practices that are working and replicate them? And then maybe sometimes really ask sites to, like, that's what we're going to focus on, right? We're putting a lot of energy in literacy, as we should, because it's like the roots of how we're going to move this district. But honestly, I have not heard a single conversation about math since I probably got on the board. And to be honest, you talk to any teacher and they're like, I don't even know what our math curriculum really is. My math, like, I don't even know if that's up to date. I don't know. I get a book. I don't really use it, right? So I say this because we have a lot, and I feel like we're a little lost in the muffle of everything that we have, right? And everything that constantly change. If iReady is going to be our thing, let's make it our thing, and let's invest in it, and let's incentivize what works, and let's try to replicate that, right? But if that's not our thing, then let's focus on something else. I think that on their current leadership, I'm feeling hopeful for that. And at the same time, I also know that iReady is being used by Oakland and by districts that honestly are not moving the needle, right? So if that's the tool that we choose, like, we have to figure out ways that it's gonna work for us, right? Sorry, I concentrate on iReady, but I'm using that as an example of the overall problem. Hope that came across. But thank you so much for the presentation. I did read the action plans actually late last night, and they were great. So thank you for that work that's happening in the schools. Okay, we're now going to move to the consent items that were pulled, which was C8 and C9. Trustee Reckler, you pulled C8. Would you like to ask your questions on the contracts?
Sure, yes. Once again, usually this is done off camera in a meeting prior to the board meeting, which I did not have a chance to attend because I was in transit. So I just have a couple of questions. They can be, if you don't have the answers, I can get them later. So the first one is be the change for its expanded learning. It says that this is a new service for 23-24, but we did use be the change last year. So I was wondering if this is different or is just want a little more information on what this is versus what we've done in the past. And the same is true for Growing Together. Growing Together is it says it's a new program, but it is, we used them last year.
So, I'm trying to pull up the contract, but for there, we did receive the additional expanded learning funds. And so these are new vendors that we are choosing to work with. But I need to just pull it up so I can make sure I understand which, this is under number 8.
Yeah, and you can get back to me too. It doesn't have to be right now, but I'm fairly certain that these are not new vendors. And may I proceed?
Yes.
Okay, and then the next one is for Northeastern University, which was Lead by Learning, which was Mills, I'm guessing. So this contract for De Anza High School and the contracts for El Cerrito High School say that they run from July 22 through June 23. So are these contracts that got backdated somehow lost? Or are they just dated?
I think Ms. Moses can address those.
Yes, good evening, trustee Reckler. These particular contracts did not follow our stated process for approval. They were, as I understand it, contracts that were initiated by our EDs in order to provide professional development at these school sites. I do not have an answer for you as to why they are so late, but I do know that services have been rendered. We received an invoice, and at that point, we began the process of ensuring that they were cleared so that we could pay these invoices. It's something that was brought to my attention during board agenda review, and we're refining our processes to ensure that that doesn't continue to happen, especially during the school year.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, the last question is for Social Policy Research Associates. They are going to do an evaluation of the after-school program. We did have an evaluation last year, and I'm not able to recall if it was the same organization or a different, but I would be interested in what they found. And once again, I don't need that right now, but I would be interested in what the survey discovered. And that's all I have on contracts.
Thank you, trustee Reckler. If it's okay with you, I'll move the item then.
That's fine, and I'll second it.
Wonderful. Okay, board, let's move to our vote. Clerk Smith Folds,
Smith Folds, yes.
trustee Christian,
Yes.
trustee Reckler,
Reckler, yes.
trustee Phillips.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Passed unanimously. Thank you. And then trustee Reckler, I believe you also pulled C9. Go ahead.
Yes, so on this list of vendors is Performance Fact, and I thought they had hit the dustbin, so I was just curious if Performance Fact is still with us or not. Thank you.
Okay, I think I can answer that one as well. This is our approved list of vendors that we are able to contract with. It does not guarantee them a contract, but it does allow them the ability to attempt a contract in our district.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I'm complete.
Thank you. Okay,
And I'll move it.
wonderful. I'll second. Thank you.
I do have a question.
Oh, go ahead, Clerk Smith.
With these approved direct services contracts, these are the ones that have been approved to go on the buffet and school sites can pick from that. Is that accurate? Is that what this is, or is this a different set of contracts?
That is correct. The RFPs is our process for approving vendors to work in our district.
Okay, thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, let's move to a vote. Clerk Smith Folds,
Smith Folds abstains.
Trustee Christian,
Yes.
Trustee Reckler,
Reckler, yes.
Trustee Phillips.
Yeah.
And I'm a yes as well. Passes 4 yes, 1 abstention. Okay, board, the last item we have is comments from the board. If we could keep it under 4 minutes, I'd appreciate it, just because of the time, but we're doing pretty well tonight. So if we could please put up the time with 4 minutes. Is there anyone that would like to start? Trustee Phillips, go ahead.
Thank you very much. So I want to start by telling everyone that I hope that they are having a good, safe, and a happy summer. Whatever it is that they are doing, I hope that they are laughing, sleeping, getting rest, and spending time with their friends and their family. And we do look forward to seeing everyone back. But while you have the time, enjoy it, whatever activities you are engaged in right now. The second thing that I want to talk about very briefly is music. So there have been some emails floating around to board members and staff regarding potential cuts to music programs. I want to share with the public that there is a church in the city of Richmond called Grace Lutheran Church that has been running a free music program probably for 20 years. They have instruments that they allow the children to use for free. There is no charge to participate in this program. They actually have 4 classes, and the number of classes fluctuates, but they have 4 classes, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays, where they teach the children. The pastor of the church is actually the music teacher. He is a former professional musician, and he plays multiple instruments. I mean, he plays piano and bass and trumpet and trombone, and I mean, he's like I don't know what the word is. I'm looking for a word, but it's I'm missing the word right now. But my kids participate in this program. My daughter's been participating for about 2 years. My oldest son, just started participating like a week ago, and they gave him a trumpet to play. And previously they had given my daughter a violin. She was playing the clarinet already, and they gave her a violin to play, but we said that was too much and she needs to focus on the clarinet. But the point I'm trying to make is that your babies can learn how to play instruments for free in the community. If you, I'm gonna give you my district email address, instead of putting the pastor's information out on TV. Um, But if you are interested, send me an email and I will connect you with the pastor. My district email address is Mr. That's MISTER Phillips, PHILLIPS at WCCUSD.net. And it's a great program. My kids participate, yours can too. They're looking for students. And again, it's all free. With my last 20 seconds, I said what winning looks like to me. I would share it. It is that every child attends a safe school where they are engaged and able to achieve academically. I encourage everybody to have a definition of winning, and that we are able to sit down and talk about what that definition looks like and that we're able to get there by any means necessary. So thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Reckler, do you have any comments?
Not many. I just hope everybody is enjoying summer and taking it slow. And one note to President Gonzalez Hoy, I would like a policy committee. We tried, it was so chaotic. We never really met. I think that committee expired in June. There is substantial work to do on our policies. What came forward tonight in consent, we actually should have approved before it came forward, but so I'm hoping that we can move that forward, and that is it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Trustee Christian, do you have any comments? Trustee Clerk Smith-Folds, do you have any comments?
Thank you so very much. This is my summer of growth. So to that end, I want to say an apology. I'm always quick to defend, but I don't think that you meant any harm to the Hercules community when you said that we had a big clicks. You were saying, and I agree with you, that how do we get that level of engagement all over the district when we're talking about facilities newsletters, or we're talking about surveys or all those things. I would like to work with the district to really work on our communication that goes all over the district, because every community needs to have that level of engagement with their local school sites and all over the district. I would like to take a minute to thank CAO Johnson for her presence and knowledge, and you did a fantastic job tonight. So I want to give you those flowers. Finally, school starts on August the 15th, 2023. There are lots of ways to get yourself and your child ready. As parents and guardians, reach out to your site and join your PTAs and your PTOs, join your boosters, your SSC, your APACs, your ELACs, your CBO. Come to all of those meetings that the district offers to the best of your ability, because that's really where you have a seat at the table. To the parents of middle schoolers, changing for PE is huge. They need to practice. You only have a little bit of time to change out of those clothes, and you need to practice. Also, deodorant is a must. They are in middle school. They are starting to smell. Also, they're having more than one teacher. So they need to get used to having 6 teachers. That's a big change from elementary to secondary. To our seniors and our high schoolers, 180 days goes really, really fast. So enjoy each day. Also to our very youngest learners and their parents, thank you for trusting us with your babies. Please continue to read to them and help them transition by making sure that they're able to zip, button, and tie. If your baby cannot tie their shoes, get them some Velcro, because teachers do not have time to bend down and tie their shoes every 3 minutes. I want to let you know that I abstained on the community. I abstained on the contracts, or because I want them to come back to the board for us to see in the presentations, to come back and say, this is what was working. This is why we put them back on the buffet for sites to be able to use them. Board and colleagues, thank you so much for your hard work. I'm looking forward to us setting clear direction and a vision and pushing this district forward. I think that this is the past time for us to push the district forward and push the district in the direction that we know that the community wants them to go. President Gonzalez Hoy, thank you for your leadership. I am complete. Oh, and my birthday is August the 13th. Thank you.
Thank you, Clerk Smith-Folds. Okay, for my comments, I want to start by thanking Ms. Neely Johnson, because she helped not just prepare the agenda, but do the work usually Dr. Hurst does. So great job on your first meeting. And thank you. Doctors will be really proud. I wrote on my notebook before Clerk Smithville said it, so I just wanted to say that. I want to thank staff as well. I know that all of you have barely gotten a break this summer because you're all trying to catch up on a million things. Mr. Freeze, I'm looking to you because I have emailed you like 6 times in the last week. So thank you, all of you. I want to thank everyone who's working summer school because gosh, you probably need the money. I will not do it. I did it once and it was exhausting. So thank you, everybody who's working summer school, including all of you who are still working right now. I agree. I would love to have a special meeting just to go deeper on literacy. Like Trustee Reckler mentioned, I actually would love to include that into a PD for the board on all the curriculums that we utilize, just so that we can become better at our craft and at what we are actually voting on and advocating and what's happening in the classroom. So I already feel disconnected from the work, and I've been out of classroom, 6 years. So I would really love to just reconnect with the work that's happening every day in our schools. So hopefully that's coming in the fall. The policy committee, yes, absolutely. We need to restart that. We have a few policies that we have to approach really soon. And then I just want to remind everybody, and I hate that I'm the one that has to do this, but next year is going to be lean. We cannot forget that next year is going to be lean. I don't know about the rest of you here, but I've gotten so many emails this summer from community members and staff about things that we should be paying for. Of course, there's a million needs in our district. We all know this, right? We all have either kids in this district or have been teachers or staff in this district, or parents, and we know the need that exists in every school and community. We have a difficult year of decisions. Instead of adding more, we're gonna have to cut, right? So as all these emails come, I have almost every single email, I have a deep sense of hurt in my stomach because I don't know how to respond to, no, we cannot add more program, right? No, we cannot potentially open schools on the weekend because it's going to cost us to do that, right? No, we cannot do this. And it's not because we don't want to, right? I think every single one of us wishes we could just do it all. But like the conversation we had today about literacy, we have to focus on what works, replicate that, because that's what's going to keep our students safe, and it's going to actually make them succeed, right? Because we are failing kids right now with the resources that we have, right? So we have to do more. But with that said, I didn't want to end on a bleak note, but I've been struggling answering emails in the community lately. But I just want to thank everybody. Thank you for the work. The next board meeting is on August 2nd here at the John Middle School. Then we also have a retreat on August 4th at Helms Middle School. Thank you. Have a good night, everybody. I adjourn the meeting at 9:25.